pure economic logic, as we talk about market system and marketization in Russia, I think this is among many other areas that markets intervened, and probably with the same logic as in economics, politics, police, and so on and so forth. So probably we can provide the wider look on that as some sort of economic development of market system in Russia. And in this sense, I have a couple of questions. First of all, about the problem of status in terms of professional and occupation. Is there any differences, for example, for business people more than for the employees and so on, as well as different professions? Additional issue about the group difference. It seems that probably there are some subcultures that tolerate in different ways on this issue. In some subcultures maybe it's more or less normal, in some it's not acceptable, and probably it would be interesting to, if you have some data about that, it would be interesting to listen. If not, maybe some remarks about that. And one question for clarification, maybe I missed whether you collected data about some sort of commercial sex receiving from professional prostitutes. Is it included or was it excluded from this data set?
Okay. Thank you. Okay, then I will hit some of the questions. I will try to hit them all. Thanks for the first question, and in fact that's important. By using the sexual revolution theme, I wasn't trying to imply that sexual revolution, so-called Western sexual revolution, or even better, Marxist sexual revolution was actually fulfilled. And in fact, I was not arguing that at all. So the experiment was very, very brief in the Soviet years, and it was arguably by now reversed, at least in many areas within the West as well, especially in the United States. My main interest was rather just the logics or the discourse of how these three spheres, intimacy, politics, and economics, come together or don't. And in fact, I am trying to make use of some of this other literature, feminist literature, and also, for example, I'm using Eva Elois as well, and she talks very much about the connection between capitalism and romance in a way that is, I think, close to my argument as well. I think one reason that I might kick out this sexual revolution theme is that it's distracting from the main argument of the paper about compensated dating, and it raises lots of additional questions. And one of those additional questions, or a few of them, were also brought up. What about these types of activities during Soviet years, and gender balance in Soviet times was certainly not at all equal, and it had a problematic gender order. And I think that's absolutely true, and I'm not trying to say that compensated dating practices are completely new in Russia, but what's interesting is they're expressed differently, and if you look at them qualitatively too, they're expressed using an economic language, which is one that matches the current culture, and it's related to certain types of luxuries which were essentially not available before, and of course it functions through the internet. And in a way which is much more public, whereas before it had to kind of remain behind the scenes and taboo. So those are a few of the differences, but I would rather not deal with them, which is another reason why I might, again, just get rid of this wider theoretical frame for the purpose of this particular journal article. Yeah, we need to describe better the economic situation in the three different cities. In fact, our argument does separate difference between economic situation or more precisely economic culture. So if I would say it here, even if I did say it in the paper, I guess the argument is that overall level of economic development, let's say even GDP per capita, and we could find figures like this, over the past, say 25 years, have led to an entrenchment of a certain type of Western neoliberal economic culture, which implies a certain certain values such as materialism, profit orientations, and individualism, which are linked to this behavior. This is the argument that I need to make more clear.
You need to prove it.
I'm sorry?
You need to prove it by statistics.
I need to prove it better. No, yeah, this part will be hard to prove because, just because I only have aggregate level data for these only 3 cities, and I can sort of make the inference, and I can say, hey, it's hard to explain Kiev because it's somewhere in the middle and it wanders back and forth, but we can at least attempt to explain the difference between Moscow and Minsk using this type of information you suggested. It's a good idea to try the models using separating between male and female regressions and seeing if there's a difference that comes up there. If there's no difference, and I would suspect there's no difference because giving is so male dominated, essentially we're dealing with a male sample anyways.
I mean, that's a given. Maybe it's just a male model.
Maybe it's just what?
Male. It's
Yeah, exactly. But we should check it. And if there's no difference, we can report it and say, hey, we've tested and in fact nothing changes, or something does change, which requires another model. And part of this background information in the 3 cities would be looking at, say, gender equality in the workplace and income differences. And in the last time I presented this in Sweden, we're going to probably laugh, but actually it's relevant as well. They suggested looking at the price of prostitutes in relation to in the cities. And honestly, this has come up in qualitative work. Some men had said here, well, in fact, prostitutes in Moscow are so expensive, and there's so many beautiful women around, and then they sort of were suggesting that this is the natural way forward in line with these prices. But yeah, this could be looked at quite critically as well, I suppose. But the hypotheses were, I guess I can zoom back. Yeah, there were 3 things we're trying to cover here. First hypothesis is that between the 3 cities, or overall, this should only be a niche practice. I didn't expect that so-called economic logic would penetrate everyday dating to such a wide extent as say 30%, or it's probably going to be even more. This is a relatively minor hypothesis. More important would be in the second issue with the logistic regression models, where we expected giving to be gendered, where we expected it to be based on materialism and individualistic values at the same time, and be linked to those with highest incomes for the materialism reasons that we mentioned. And it should be linked to the last issue there, greater number of sexual partners and sex without love. That means we think it should be tied to sexual liberation overall in Russia. It's kind of well, not just Russia, but say it's an Eastern European style of sexual liberation. And I will not use revolution because of the original slide, which showed it is not fulfilled in nearly every sphere. That's the next question. 3 types of questions. These types of. Okay. Whether there's a bias in terms of answering these types of questions. I would suppose, well, the big problem is doing any quantitative surveys in Russia. You can't go door to door, you can't call people don't answer the phone, they don't answer the doors. I think if anywhere people are going to answer questions like this, most truthfully on the internet. I don't know if we have a way to judge whether they were truthful or not ultimately. Probably not. Well, I suppose if they were lying in a random way, then we wouldn't find any results whatsoever. And so the fact that we find patterns which are somehow linked to hypotheses would presume that at least we got some bulk of truthful answers, I would hope. And final set of questions. In fact, I'm interested in marketization in a lot of different spheres. And one reason which brought me in my previous work to, say, families and friendships, I was interested in this area because in a lot of transition literature, as you know, or more widely transitology, they looked at changes in Eastern Europe but didn't consider how always it affected everyday life. They would look at, okay, this economic growth happened this way, political change happened this way, but they often didn't look at changes within families or, say, friendships. And so before I dealt with families and friendships, and then I realized, I left out romantic or sexual relationships, and so I wanted to continue the same logic here. We asked about occupation, and we didn't check, and that's a good idea to check, because we might find occupational groupings that are important. In terms of subcultures, I don't know how much we can get at here. maybe it's more of a qualitative issue, but we already started to describe in different work some of the subcultures linked to online gift for sex exchanges and some of the styles of presenting themselves and the ways of exchange. We also had a person dealing with travel in exchange for sex explicitly within this group. But I think the most relevant way to pursue this particular question is also in relation to this big question we have on homosexuals and bisexuals. That this result is, in some ways, was surprising. In order to really understand it, I think we would have to do some deeper research, or at least a more specific analysis using this sample within our survey.
Is it possible maybe to ask in the questionnaire, is it acceptable in your friendship circle, something like that? This kind of relations, probably it would be a way to find something.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, any other questions, comments?
By the way, is there any similar results in, for example, for developed countries, in Germany or in Britain, or probably it will be the same picture there, maybe not?
It's a great question. I suspect some differences, and there are a few surveys that deal with this stuff. But the thing is, our method was trying to correct for some of the weaknesses in other surveys. For example, other surveys didn't specify, have you received this gift contractually, or have you received this gift as a pure gift? And in terms of gift-giving theory, this is extremely important, and a lot of surveys actually ignore this, and this is something we included. So in certain questions that won't be comparable because we asked them a different way, but it's something we need to look at. And there is some data that exists, especially in Africa. This question has been looked at in depth, and also compensated dating has been looked at in East Asia, in Japan and Taiwan and Shanghai.
Yeah, but you started from questions not about compensated data.
You mean like sexual revolution? Oh yeah, sure, sexual liberation. Yeah, but this is interesting as well, and this is one reason I kind of brought in this wider frame, because I was also interested, has Russian sexual liberation, has it in some aspects gone further than in other societies? Maybe gone further because of this tie to materialism? It could be an interesting hypothesis, but I don't know yet.
Yeah, because definitely some sectors of Russian society, it came further.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's something that we could look at. Yeah, in the next step. I think what I'll do is split the sexual revolution paper into a different paper and deal with exactly that question, that kind of cross-country comparative.
Okay, can I have a question? I was thinking about Moscow, so why it's Moscow and not Kiev or Minsk, so where this practice is so spread. And I guess that here's some cultural effect, because Moscow is more international city. I guess so, I am not sure about, but I guess that Moscow is more international city than Kiev or Minsk.
International or multicultural?
International and multicultural. I mean, that here we can see mixed cultures, and so what I'm thinking next